What's up, everybody? It's about 2:30. Oh, no, actually 2:10. Actually, I thought I said 2:30. That was my bad. 2:10, and ever since the Nostalgia Critic came back, or Doug Walker brought the Nostalgia Critic back, he's added a little something extra to kind of tide us over until the next review. And basically, what he's given us is the editorial. Basically, where he talks for about maybe 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes at most. I think the longest so far today was 11, or near 12 minutes. And basically what he talks, well, it's just him, kind of like classic Nostalgia Critic, right? But it's an editorial. And he talks about basically certain things. He doesn't review, it's not about reviewing movies or anything. He just talks about certain things related to shows and maybe movies, but that's it. And one thing he brought up today was something that, I've watched on occasions, just not as much as I should, and that's the Looney Tunes show, which airs on Cartoon Network. Now, when this show first got announced, I think Doug basically said it best in this editorial. He said that basically a lot of fans looked at it with controversy. Basically, you had a split fan base, kind of like what the Sonic fan base is like right now. But you had a split fan base. And it wasn't over the fact that you had a new Looney Tunes show. I think anybody that's a Looney Tunes fan could agree that that was something we've been wanting. But the way it was presented, presented originally before it came out, the way they talked about how the show was going to be, I think really kind of took a lot of people by surprise. And then when they saw the redesigns of the characters for this show, true, it kind of brought the characters back almost similar and blended, similar if not blended, a bit of the classic look into a more modernized look. And basically allowed the Looney Tunes to still showcase the personalities of who they are. True, a lot of people, and even Doug said this, will compare it to being almost like an animated version of Seinfeld, which is kind of true in some sense. But the one thing this show has done that has not been done since the days of Tiny Toons has given the Looney Tune characters, in my opinion, some much needed life. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know some people might find me crazy, might think I'm crazy for saying this, but I love Space Jam. I do. I really got a kick out of Space Jam. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was cool. Heck, I even enjoyed it, not as much as Space Jam, but I even got a kick a little bit out of Back in Action. True, it wasn't on par with Space Jam, but it was still good. And then, of course, you've got two shows that basically I felt were, whatever. Duck Dodgers, I thought was okay out of the two. It was probably the better one out of these two. But the other one, Baby Looney Tunes? Seriously? I mean, I can understand that this is basically portraying the Looney Tunes as babies, and you're shelling out money to do an animated adaptation of one of your, at the time, most popular franchises, one of your most popular Looney Tune franchises. Excuse me. But, come on. That boat sailed long ago with teenage baby renditions of our favorite characters. That boat sailed long ago. I hate to say that. It sailed a long time ago. Now, I'm not saying that Baby Looney Tunes didn't have an audience. I'm not saying it. It did, obviously, because it lasted. And it had like 1 or 2 movies direct to video. But again, that boat sailed. Sailed a long time ago. And then, of course, you have another one that I actually did like. even though Doug Walker, Nostalgia Critic, said it was kind of despised. Well, let me ask you this. If this show was despised, then why did it last for 2 seasons? Why did the finale for both seasons end up being 2-parters? You answer me that. I'll tell you why. Because there's a cult following for this show. This show took the Looney Tune characters in a whole nother direction. Because it wasn't actually the Looney Tune characters. It was actually the Descendants. The Descendants of the future. Basically what they did with this show, which was, of course, you probably know what I'm talking about, Lunatics Unleashed, is they took 2 separate concepts. They took a concept that they used for Tiny Toons, where they basically made similar versions, but different versions of the characters. And they also took the concept of superheroism and origin of that superhero, of how they became superheroes, and put it into this show. Okay, now you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean by taking an idea from Tiny Toons? The idea from Tiny Toons is you basically made characters similar to basically made characters inspired, if not looking similar or acting similar to the mentors. You did the same with Lunatics Unleashed, and to show that these were the descendants of the original Looney Tunes, as the premise said. Anytime the characters were out of costume, they looked exactly like their descendants. You had Ace looking like Bugs in some way. You had Lexi looking like Lola. You had Duck looking like Daffy. You had Tech looking like Wily. Who else? You had Slam looking like Taz. I can't think of the other one's name. I'm trying to think. It's right at the tip of my tongue. Tip of my tongue. I know it's there. Rev. That's his name. Rev. You had him looking like the Roadrunner. And anybody they associated with or encountered was basically a descendant of the other Looney Tunes. Some were portrayed as villains. Some were portrayed as allies. But they were all descendants in some way, if not inspired by some way, by the original Looney Tunes. You had Porky's descendant ended up being the leader of a gang, of a mob. You had Granny's descendant wanting to usurp Tweety's descendants' throne on their planet. You had Sylvester's descendant, sort of like a Darth Vader ripoff almost. You get the idea, right? You get the idea. Now, true, they did have some original villains. Don't get me wrong about that. They had some original villains and everything. And that, to me, is what made the show good. So, no offense to Doug Walker. I'm a fan of his work. I'm a fan of the Nostalgia Critic. I've been a fan for almost 5 years. But, come on. Honestly, Lunatics despised? I don't think so. Not by a long shot. However, the Looney Tunes show, though, that's another story. You see, the Looney Tunes show, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong about this. I think it's, like I said earlier, I think it's a breath of fresh air. I really do. It's a nice, unique take of the Looney Tunes in suburbia, kind of going through everyday life. But, depending on the situation, allowing themselves to be themselves. Now, again, like Doug Walker said in his editorial, this show was met with controversy. And it wasn't just because it involved the Looney Tunes and some of the Looney Tunes had redesigns. It's mostly because of the fact that certain characters were overhauled big time in certain ways. Most importantly, Lola. Now, everybody was pretty much used to Lola being the way she was. The basketball playing sweetheart, I guess you could say basketball playing sweetheart beauty of a rabbit. They were used to that. They were used to seeing her like that. They were. I mean, heck, here's what's funny. I don't know where my dad hid it. I don't know if we lost it somewhere. We probably did. But we would play these crane machines, and I still do it on occasions. And my dad won a Lola Bunny plush. And we kept it. I don't know where he put it at, if he lost it or not, but we kept it. And it was the Lola that was presented in the movie. And this was the Lola that fans embraced. The fans embraced up until the Looney Tunes show came out. And then things changed. The Looney Tunes show came out and a new Lola was brought in. I mean, when you take a look at the facial expressions on Lola at times, especially if you go to Looney Tunes Wiki, to the Wiki page for the Looney Tunes show, it's called looneytunes.wiki.com or something like that, or Google it. You'll see what I mean. They'll have some gallery images of Lola, and some of the images of Lola have her looking facially just like you see her in the movie. So at least that's a good sign. That's a good sign there that at least Lola at times looks like what she did in the movie. Even though her personality is different. It is. Don't get me wrong about that. It is different. But you know what? Sometimes, depending on the situation, a difference can make a difference. A change can make a difference. It can. You take a look at Lola in Space Jam, and you take a look at her a little bit in her cameo appearances, that she did in Tweety's Big Adventure. And there was not much really to her. The only looniness that she had was towards the end after Bugs kissed her, and that was it. And she went, woo woo, and then pulled down the next scene. Then pulled down the next scene, if you will, like a curtain. And that was it. Again, no looniness abound from her. The only humor Looney Tune quality she had at times, besides that one little bit at the end, was anytime someone would call a doll. And that was it. But, again, like I said, up until the Looney Tunes show came out, that was the Lola everybody was used to. But you know what's funny, though? I think people tend to forget that Lola had more adventures beyond Space Jam and beyond Tweety's Big Adventure. Yeah. Lola actually had her own adventures in the Looney Tunes comics. And believe it or not, even though she was designed the same way she was in Space Jam, Lola in the comics was a very Looney Tune-like character. I'm not lying. And I would not be surprised if that's where they got the inspiration to give for Lola's new personality. I wouldn't. The only thing that we have not seen Lola do yet, and I'm pretty sure with the upcoming seasons, if there's any more seasons, we've seen her act almost very Looney Tune-ness, if you will. Very lunatic-wise, very, out there. Hearts in her eyes and stuff like that and whatever. Basically sort of like a grown-up Babs, if you will. But there is one thing I don't think she's done yet, and I'm pretty sure they've considered it. I don't think she's melted yet. If you really want to prove that this Lola is different than the Lola before, you got to do something where she's going to melt into a puddle. End of story. When you do that,